What's going on with all of this talk about agreements in Paris, the temperatures going up? It seems like we're getting to a moment where there's overload in the mainstream media. Why is that, Ed?
What we're dealing with here is a lie. It's not happening, at least not in the way that they're talking about it. If it's happening at all, which is even questionable, but if it is, it's certainly not man-made. Not too long ago, all the news items and all the TV programs were about the global cooling and get ready for the big ice age and everything. Well, that didn't happen, and now they started to tell us about global warming, and that didn't happen really, although they kept telling you it was happening. That became so embarrassing for these people that they had to change their name from global warming. They said, let's not call it warming anymore because that doesn't work. People are seeing it's not warming. Let's call it climate change. Well, that's a little easier to handle because the climate is always changing. So what's wrong with this climate change? Well, they want to have us believe that climate change means that it's getting worse, that the hurricanes are getting worse, and the storms are getting worse, and the droughts are getting longer, and all of this sorts of things. The data does not support any of that. It's a lie from top to bottom. If people can be scared out of their wits that the planet is going to come to some kind of a horrible end, that the islands are all going to sink, the coastlines are going to be lowered, the cities will be inundated with water, there will be drought, and we're all going to starve, we're all going to die of thirst, all of these horrible things, they will be softened up, and they'll be conditioned to accept all these draconian solutions supposedly being offered by the same people that have created the myth, that are telling the lies. Their solution for all of this, if you happen to notice, is all the same. More government, more taxes, more regulations and controls over you bad people who have this big bad carbon footprint. We're going to control you because you see you're the problem. Your lifestyle is too high. And that's really the story. All of these politicians and all the people with their hand in the public till making a huge profit over this global warming or climate change industry that has been created out of this. It's all about their profit and their control over human beings. And that is the motive. That is what's behind the lie. They're reaching for total global control over the economy and over the personal lives of every human being on this planet. And this lie or the scare tactic of global warming is one of the most convenient excuses they have for conditioning people to accept it and think that it's all in their own best interest. That's what it's all about. It's all about psychology. If you can conquer the mind and convince people that black is white and white is purple, if you can convince them that the planet is heating up, for example, and we're coming to the end of the line for our children and our grandchildren, you make them feel guilty. You make them feel that by cooperating with the system and doing exactly what you're told, somehow you now have become a better person.
Do you worry, Ed, that we might be approaching a time when the lunatics currently, in control of the ship might say, I'll tell you what, it's about time that we make it illegal to deny this, or that we severely punish people for doing it? What do you think?
Well, we're already there. No textbooks would be allowed into the school system. In fact, the next step is you won't even be able to discuss it in a classroom. If any teacher brings up the topic of questioning global warming, they will lose their job and possibly could go to jail. It's already happening now. The new warfare is the warfare for perceptions. It's what you perceive to be true. That's you act on your perceptions. So we all do that. We always will, always have. The only question is the perceptions have to be based on something. If they're based on myths, we're in trouble. If our perceptions are based on truth, then we have a better chance at doing the right thing while we're here on this planet.
climate has been constantly changing since the Earth was formed 4.6 billion years ago. So then what about carbon dioxide, the great villain of the global warming alarmists? Where does that fit into this picture? Not as neatly as you might think. Temperatures and carbon dioxide levels do not show a strong correlation. In fact, over very long time spans, periods of hundreds of millions of years, they are often completely out of sync with one another. But we do know there are many more factors in play than simply the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. Factors such as the shape and size of the Earth's elliptical orbit around the Sun, activity from the Sun, and the amount of wobble or tilt in the Earth's axis, among many others. Contrary to media headlines, the trend over the past couple of decades has been essentially flat. Meanwhile, human-caused CO2 emissions are higher than ever. About 25% of all the CO2 emissions from human sources have occurred during this period of no net warming. So what are we in for next? Will the temperature resume an upward trend? Will it remain flat for a lengthy period? Or will it begin to drop? No one knows, not even the biggest, fastest computers. Predicting the climate, one of the most complex systems on Earth, with thousands of inputs, many of which we don't understand, isn't an exact science or anything close to it. Maybe it's just a tad arrogant to suggest that we can predict the weather or the climate or just about anything 60 years from now. The science is not settled. The debate is not over. The climate is always changing.